Now we're getting to the fun part of grading, or at least the most difficult part of grading, which is grading for quality and content. This is also admittedly the most subjective part of grading and the part which will take the most time. Now, quality includes elements such as demonstration of mastery of concepts, the appropriate use and proper use of terms of the discipline, an appropriate level of depth demonstrated in discussions of what is written, the proper tone and language, the writing quality, as well as other general indications that the student understands the topic of the discussion. Now, one thing you can do at the beginning of your grading process here is to get a general feel for how much time the students spent on the discussions. This also can help you with the activity level, because if your particular discussions require that it be active on a certain number of days per week, this particular process I'm going to walk through real quick will help you look at that as well. And that's sorting the student discussions by student to put them so that each student's posts are together. Now, you can also do this in the grade book, but here it tells you the time, which is a little bit easier to look at in a quicker fashion. So we do that by going to the top of the discussions, looking on the right-hand side of the screen, and clicking on this A to Z button. What that does is it groups all the discussions by student. So you can tell how many posts very quickly a student made. You can also tell by looking at the time increment between the posts, how much time was spent between the posts. So for example, if you have somebody who spent 15 minutes between reply post 1 and reply post number 2, they probably spent 15 minutes on that assignment. If they log back in the next day, you don't really know for sure, and it could be quite a bit more time. What we're looking at here is we're preparing ourselves for the discussion or complaint or argument from the students that they're spending too much time on the course. Now, our syllabus tells us how much time the course designer has planned for each element of the course, including discussions. If you pull up the syllabus, you can see that it tells you by assignment the expected time for a particular assignment. So, if the particular time for an assignment says it should be 4 hours and 30 minutes, it's unlikely that can be completed in 45 minutes. So if we see a student has posted 3 times very closely together, it's possibly an indication that if their quality is not good, that perhaps they need to spend more time on it. Now, it is possible to work offline. In other words, do the posts in Word and then copy-paste them over. However, I find that's not very common, and the indication of time in Learning Studio is usually pretty secure, pretty safe bet in terms of how much time they're spending on the discussions. So if you're seeing a lack of depth and a shortage in word counts, this additional research in terms of understanding how much time the person is spending may help you bolster your argument and your presentation back to the student in terms of some of the problems they're probably facing. Now, a real-life example of this is a graduate student that I had not long ago who was venting his frustrations via email for learning less than 10 points in a 10-point discussion. This particular discussion did not have a reply component. It simply was a particular single post that they needed to make on a particular topic. After 2 weeks in a row of not earning full points, an email was sent complaining about how much time was being spent and stated specifically that my concern is that I followed the rubric and what I thought would be a score of 10 out of 10. I selected 2 advertising and branding tweets, supported my answer as best as possible in 2 words, and used at least 1 credible source. Now, what he's saying is he felt he met the objective criteria of 2 tweets demonstrated, 2 tweets linked, and 200 words and 1 source, and therefore he felt he deserved 10 points. Well, let's look at his assignment. Let's look at the assignment and his reply and break it down a little bit into detail to see what actually happened. First of all, when we look at the assignment, I don't know where he got 200 words because the assignment's only 100, 150 words. Now, interestingly, most of us probably realize and understand that it's much more difficult to write a short post than a long post. And if someone is having trouble getting a short post down, they're probably not spending enough time to understand how to edit it and make every word count. If you're finding you have that problem in your courses, you may want to post some support material, find some support material. There's quite a bit of support material out there on the internet about concise writing, and post that to your students to help them understand how to write concisely. Here we see in this particular assignment, they were supposed to list 2 examples of advertising and branding, as you've seen in company tweets, because this particular assignment was about Twitter, and then using at least 1 source, post why companies should use Twitter. Well, let's look at his actual submitted post, because we're looking at quality. So as we look through his post here, we see he does mention Twitter in the first paragraph. But as we look through what he wrote, he doesn't really talk about branding and advertising at all. In fact, we don't even see the word branding appear in his post. And you would think that if the topic is supposed to be about branding, you'd think you'd at least see that term in the post referencing that particular concept. So the problem we have here, as we look through this post, is he's not discussing the topic. He's talking about target market and segmentation. Those are definitely part of marketing, but they're not directly related to branding because branding is not differentiated across segments or across target markets. A company's brand is consistent to all of its target markets. Also, Twitter does not allow target marketing in the sense he's suggesting, which is that when somebody posts a tweet or a company posts a tweet, it can segment it to its followers. That's not true. Twitter, when you post a tweet, goes to everyone, at least as of today, who is subscribed or liked or following that particular company. So he's incorrect in what he's saying. So you can't use it. There is no demographic, geographic, or psychographic targeting in Twitter in the way he's implying. So that's an incorrect statement. Now, he is correct that listening on Twitter is a good thing to do, but he should use some course concepts such as competitive intelligence or competitive response to show he was applying that to that particular concept, especially on a graduate level post. So this post scored 7 out of 10. Well, the next week he had a similar issue, but the next week's assignment was about global marketing. And the global marketing assignment asked him to do this. It said, please again list 2 examples of global marketing that you've seen in the company tweets, and then in 100 to 150 words, at least one source, explain why companies should use Twitter in global marketing. So we clearly see the theme here is global marketing. Again, let's pull up his exact post and take a look at it. We can see he does reference Twitter again in the first line. Interestingly, almost exactly what he used the previous week, but no, that's okay. Then he talks about how Twitter provides a platform to connect with customers and prospects. That's fine. Gives the ability to monitor competitors. Okay, that actually was maybe from last week, not this week. And then he talks about this other source. He pulls in a second source, which is good, and talks about why customers might do business with somebody because they think they're getting something out of it. This engagement is based on emerging science of behavioral economics and talks a little about loyalty and buying decisions, and that's all great, but I don't see anything about global marketing. So what happens is he submitted something that didn't match the assignment. That's a quality problem. It's a content problem. He didn't reference any theory or concept from the text about global marketing. Yes, Twitter has 320 million users, but does that specifically relate to global marketing? It does not, because he doesn't talk about the distribution of those Twitter users. Yes, Twitter is a global platform, or at least an international platform. It's not actually global, but it is international. But he needs to tie that comment specifically to the assignment. He does use a course concept, which is customer engagement, but again, doesn't tie it to global marketing, at least in not what he wrote. Now, his actual answer is fairly long here, but if we look at what he wrote, the words he used, he had about 139 words. If you remove the citations, he's around 115 words, which is at the bottom of the range of 100 to 150. 100 150 is very short. But if he had added a couple more sentences, he might have been able to explain how what he wrote was closer connected to the assignment. So again, we have a problem of a great response to a different question, and therefore it's not a great response to this question. And therefore, according to the rubric, it again earned a 7 out of 10, and actually could have been lower. Well, students sent an email saying, I don't understand this, and therefore, because he emailed, you should respond to the email. Don't just ignore emails. That's a bad part of engagement, bad part of student relationships. So if the student emails you, respond to the email. So specific feedback was given on the concepts and the grading comment boxes, but the email really dealt with the basic, I worked hard on this, and why did I get full points? So the email sent back looked like this. It said the time on the course syllabus for that assignment alone is 2 hours. I pulled that right off the syllabus. I don't know how much time you spent on it. So here I'm not saying he didn't spend that much time on it. Okay, you don't want to tell the student they didn't work hard on something. I'm saying the university is saying that's the average amount of time someone has spent. Some students will spend more, while some will spend less. Then I'm laying out there an optional way for him to understand what he might have done. So if you spent 4 hours on it, you're probably approaching it the wrong way. Maybe you need to review how you're approaching it. If you only spent an hour on it, maybe we should spend more time on it because we're not putting the concepts together. So you're giving the student some feedback in a general fashion tied to their concern and indicating back to the rubric and back to the syllabus, here's what we think this assignment is going to take. And if you're not understanding it, let's look to see if you're spending the time on it. Many students will think they're spending a lot of time on an assignment because they spent 30 minutes on it. And 30 minutes, when we look at the assignment criteria of 30 minutes to 4 or 5 hours on assignments, realistically is probably not going to result in the content and quality level that we're looking for. Well, let's look at another post and deal with a similar type issue in terms of lack of quality. It's a very different assignment. This one says to read this particular Bible verse, give freely and you will profit, help others and you will gain more from yourself. Then we can see we've got some specific questions to answer. What's the word profit referred to? How is the word profit referred similar or different from a for-profit company? That's a compare and contrast, by the way. And then how is profit referred to the scripture different or similar to fundraising activities? Because this came out of I believe out of a not-for-profit course. Well, we can see one particular student posted this response. Again, this happens to be a graduate level course, but this would also really not qualify an undergraduate level course. It's even worse than a graduate level course. When we look at what they wrote, we see that they have basically answered each question in one sentence. Well, that's not a lot of detail at the graduate level specifically, but also at the undergraduate level. So as we walk through their answer, we can see that it just simply doesn't provide the depth and detail that we're looking for. So this assignment was in the first workshop, so a little bit of grace can be extended. And the feedback can be provided that this is just a little bit short and lacks some detail. Then provide some content feedback in terms of what might be missing. In fact, here it says that the concept of profit, even in the Old Testament, didn't necessarily relate just to pleasure. There was some other expectations. And that there were implications in the Old Testament, there would be other kinds of tangible rewards for following the biblical law. Also called out that the term profit does not exist in the nonprofit financial world because it's a concept that is not allowed. A not-for-profit is not allowed to make profit. Now, they may have excess funding, but she needs to understand, this particular case was a she, that you have to use the proper terms when talking about the proper concepts. Then also, this particular post had several writing issues which were a problem in its graduate level course. So again, a slight note here that there is some writing issues here and possibly should spend some more time on the writing. This particular one, I believe, was graded as an 8, but there was a note there that said, by the way, for future reference, this could be graded as a 6 or a 7 because there are some quality issues present. So here we're providing specific feedback on the quality issues while not providing all the answers, so the student does have to continue to study. Again, this was a graduate level course, so much deeper level of discussion is required. Well, let's pull up some undergraduate samples and take a look at some undergraduate samples next.